Hello, everybody.
Hello.
Hi, Tom. Hi, Sean.
Hello.
Thanks for joining us.
Happy to be here.
Good. Hi, Lindy. Nice to see you. Or I'm not seeing you, but nice to have you here. Let's see. We'll wait. We do want to start on time because I know John, you and Josh, and also John D'Annunzio have some time constraints. So we usually go about an hour.
Yeah.
I don't think that's going to be a problem, but we'll see.
Tom Cross, is your wife Nancy?
No. There is
Okay.
another Tom Cross in Los Osos I found out though, so that might be them.
No, there's a Tom and Nancy that we knew many years ago that my wife worked with. So I thought maybe that was you.
Mhm.
Josh is not able to connect online, so he's going to call in.
Oh, he's going to call? Okay, that's fine. Waiting for
Yeah, keep forgetting this is a subcommittee. It's not the whole group, so there's probably won't be that many people on, right?
No, it's not going to be. Here comes somebody. This must be Trish, maybe. Oh no, this is John. Who's this? Mr. Hale.
Somebody may be coming from planning as well.
I'm sorry.
There might be someone from planning joining us.
I did reach out to Corey, but he's been out of the office.
Okay.
So he wasn't going to be able to make it. Oh, here comes Josh. But in the future, we hope to have somebody from planning, unless you know something I don't, John.
Well, we had asked the management they said they'd check, see if they said Corey, see if he could come. So maybe.
Oh, maybe he will come then.
Yeah, we'll see.
I did send him an invitation.
Yeah, I think a lot of the questions they'd be better suited to answer. So
Okay, well that's one of the important things that we want to figure out about, who is responsible for what and where to direct our questions. So we have a few more people. Trish Bartel, I think she's joining us. And Meg Siphon, but I think she texted me, said she was going to be a little bit late. We'll just wait a couple minutes. I don't want to start too late. Hi, Josh. Thanks for calling in. Are you calling or are you?
Yeah, I'm on. I'm on. Hi.
Okay. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and get started because anybody else who's going to be joining us, they're committee members that have been active with this committee for the past year, and so they're going to be they're going to know the first part. Last year, I started the Active Transportation Committee. Jen Harper was chair of the Traffic and Circulation Committee. Jan retired from the council, and as a result, the Los Osos Community Advisory Council decided to combine the two committees. It totally makes sense. Oh, here comes Jim Quisenberry. Yeah. And so this is our first, what I'm calling a combined committee. And so that's why I wanted to have John, both Johns and Josh here, and Corey, if he could be here, so that we could, first of all, lay some foundation about how to work with Public Works, how to work with LOCAC, what is our function as an advisory committee and as the council. So we're not going to get too deep into the weeds tonight, but we are going to lay this foundation. We're going to, probably talk about some details, but we'll save more of that for another meeting. So my tentative plan for this committee is to meet monthly, but to ask Public Works and Planning to show up quarterly. We're a working committee. We want to work and do our homework. And then when you guys show up, we want it to be productive. We know that you are busy, and so we want to be respectful of that, of your time. Does that sound okay to you guys?
Yeah, we'll have, as we go forward, if there's a topic to talk about quarterly, and then right now we don't have staff. It would really be a staff person that would be the liaison, and Josh is basically doing 4 jobs right now. We have so many vacancies, so I think once we're fully staffed, and if there's ongoing issues to address, I think that's good. If it's if it's not needed, then it's not needed. Yeah.
Okay, great. Yeah. And we want to talk a little bit more about that, about the staffing and how that's going to work. So I'm going to do a quick roll call. I see Trisha's here, Tom is here, Jim Hale is here, Jim Quisenberry's here. Trish and Jeff are here. We're missing Meg, but she did say she was going to be late. So, and I think we're missing John Lind. He's not showing up yet, but he may come in later. So, announcements. I think I've already made my announcement as far as how this committee is going to operate on a monthly basis, and then hopefully have productive meetings with the county staff on a quarterly basis. If that doesn't work, we'll adjust that. We'll be flexible, because I do want to make sure that we're being productive. Here comes Meg. So let's start off with public comment for items not on the agenda. Does anybody have a public comment? You can raise your hand, raise your little virtual hand if you'd like. I'm not seeing anything. All right, let's move on. We're going to go to the first agenda item, Public Works. So I really want to start off with basics. I would like for John Waddell to introduce himself and explain what his position is, what he does. I'd like Josh to do the same. And then also talk about the staffing issues that exist right now and how that's going to change. I know I had a conversation with John Diodati, and he said that there were going to be people coming in and that we would have a liaison. So as best you can, if you could describe how that's going to work so that we understand going forward, what is the best way to work together with you guys?
All right, well then I'll start off. So John Waddell, I'm Deputy Director, and my group includes transportation and roads maintenance. Also have development services, which does development review and approval for the work that's in the right of way and encroachment permits, as well as our capital project delivery. We manage tens of millions of dollars of both infrastructure and facilities projects on our county maintained roads, our water and wastewater systems, and then also for other county departments for their facilities, whether it's new new buildings, new secure facilities like jails, airport, things like that. And we also have a team, design and construction team that completes designs for primarily infrastructure projects and manages construction on many of our projects. So a little background on me: I've been at the county for over 20 years, and I also worked on the Los Osos wastewater project for really, mostly full time, but not completely, kind of off and on as there were lulls, but for 10 years. From when the county started working on it, and then through construction and into startup. I ended up transferring out of it as we were most of the way through startup and working on other things. But so a lot of history in Los Osos related to the wastewater project. But then, of course, you end up picking up on a lot of other things and get to know a lot of the residents.
Okay, well, that's some history. We won't talk about that, but thank you, John. So back to the staffing. How is the staffing regarding, or maybe Josh is the one to answer this. When we liaise with the county, how are we being affected? How are you being affected? And how is that going to change?
Right. Well, we have, it's our transportation division and kind of our traffic and transportation planning and project management group are typically one of the liaisons with LOCAC and advisory committees, and it depends on the issue. Our water and wastewater utilities folks, they interact with advisory committees, community advisory committees when there's issues that arise, whether it's operations or rate increases. So that's their role. Even development services may liaise with committees when there's a development project proposed. But then for transportation related issues, it would be Josh's group, and he could probably chime in on just kind of where he's at with his team and our vacancies. It's been really not just in our county, but even in our industry, but nationwide, since COVID, there's just been so much turnover, the great resignation, and we've really been affected by it. It's just that people have moved around and reevaluated what they're doing. We're seeing it as an opportunity. We've been making some really good hires, but we've also lost some key people that have gone to other jobs and still looking to backfill. And for the most part, we're starting to, at least in my groups, getting closer to getting whole, but that's WHOLE, but Josh's group still has some holes.
Well, that sounds like a good segue. Josh, if you could introduce yourself, tell us about your division, the transportation division, and how we work with you, and a few of the HOLEs that you need to fill, and how that would affect us and how that affects you.
Sure. Hi, everybody. Deborah, thanks for having me. Josh Roberts, Transportation Division Manager for County Public Works. Transportation Division is responsible for roads, maintenance, and traffic operations on all 1,349 miles of county roads. We have 3 distinct units within the Transportation Division. First is our largest, that's roads maintenance. Those are the guys out in the orange trucks and the bulldozers and keeping the potholes filled and the storm drains flowing when it rains. Our second group is our engineering group, smaller group. They primarily manage all of our bridge maintenance projects, our pavement management projects, and they support the roads division with more complicated engineering repairs. And then the third unit, which is where all of our vacancies currently are, is in the traffic operations. Traffic operations oversees all roadway improvements that are traffic related, such as signage, striping, maintaining signals, etc. We are fully staffed in the field, but our office staff is an army of 3 that contains a planner, a traffic engineer, and a unit supervisor. And I'm currently wearing the hat of all three of those individuals, the traffic engineer, the planner, and the unit supervisor.
Okay, Josh. Well, when you do get your new people on board, how can we anticipate working with them? Could you talk about that?
Sure. I guess I'm still trying to understand where this committee is looking to engage.
Okay.
I'm not sure who present had the opportunity to look through the notes that I emailed out on Friday afternoon to the committee. But again, our unit is primarily charged with basically post-development improvements. So we deal with the road, the signals after it's constructed. So it's maintenance and state of good repair. So our priorities are, number one, state of good repair, maintaining things in an as-is condition as best we can. But again, as I noted, based on the amount of funding that we receive from the state and from our local revenue sources, we typically run $5 to $7 million shortfall every year. What that means really is that our basic needs are met. We can fill potholes, we can keep roads open. Programs like our paving program and our bridge replacement program, those just get unfortunately slowed. So instead of our let's say our 3-year pavement program, depending on funding, might be a 5-year program. Our second priority would be safety betterments, which are typically funded through federal grants. And then our third priority would be operational betterments, which are funded through development impact fees or in partnership with development that comes to town.
Got
So for
it.
instance, in Los Osos on South Bay Boulevard at Napomo, where we installed that new traffic signal a few years back, that was primarily funded through road impact.
Got it. Yeah. So, and as we go through the meeting, I think you'll get a better understanding of where we're wanting to go. And so hopefully that will help develop this conversation. I chose 2 documents to bring forth today. I think this is what I see as the foundational documents. If I'm missing something, then, please let me know what it is and where to find it. But I basically pulled out the most current document, which is the Los Osos circulation study. Was also, I think it's identical with the fee study. Is that correct? Are they not the same?
Yeah, there's a fee. The road fee study is simply a nexus document. It determines the amount of future development based on the community plan or general plan, and then attributes the cost of improvements based on that amount of growth. It's not there's a bit of a misconception out there that these community circulation plans or even circulation elements in community plans are detailed traffic analysis, and that is not the case. They're merely a planning document. They provide policy and vision.
Okay, so this, which is the road improvement fee study 2021 update, is the most current document that we have to work off of. Is that correct?
That is correct. Yeah. So
Okay.
that would list out all the projects that are necessary for operational improvements to offset projected growth within the community. And that's to meet the county's adopted level of service standards.
Okay. And then the only other document that I felt was really relevant for this discussion was obviously the Los Osos community plan, which was written in 2015, but approved in 2020. So obviously not as current, but still has the overall vision for the community. Do I have that right? I mean, can we agree on that?
Yeah, and so I think that in terms of ATP, if that's going to be one of the focuses of this committee, you would also obviously be looking towards the county's bikeways plan and then the regional ATP that is put together by LOCAC.
Okay, so the bikeways plan, correct me if I'm wrong, Josh, that was put together in 2016 and still has not been approved by the Board of Supervisors. Is that right?
The the bicycle, the county bikeways plan, or
Yeah, the county bikeway plan.
trying to call the name right. The county bikeways plan is approved and adopted by the Board of Supervisors and is at various phases of implementation.
Okay, but was that the 2016 plan that we're talking about? Because there's not anything, hasn't been, as far as I understand, no update has happened since 2016 to the bikeways plan.
That is correct. That
Okay.
is the latest version of the plan. That plan identified some top level priority projects.
Mhm.
And I apologize, I forgot like the chapter number that identifies those. But there's about 25 projects on their priority list, and maybe half a dozen of those have been implemented, and there's probably another dozen under development right now.
Yeah, Josh, you know your stuff. So obviously I didn't pull that out because that's a countywide document and we're really focusing on Los Osos here. So we're going to keep it to just the road improvement study and then sort of incorporate the overall general planning as laid out in the community plan and see if we can understand how to incorporate some of the active transportation values that we've been talking about in my original committee. And I know, Josh, you are familiar with the work that I've been doing because you saw my presentation to the Bikeways Committee. John, you know a little bit about what we're doing or thinking about, but what we want to do is proceed in the correct way. And so we need you to educate us if we're not proceeding in the correct way. So if we're going to plan, and it says in the Los Osos community plan that there is to be a pedestrian plan, an active transportation plan. The county planning and building and public works departments should coordinate with the community to develop, incorporate, and implement a pedestrian plan and active transportation plan into this community plan. That's what we're going to do. And that is what we're asking you to help us do. So we know that's going to take a long time. We know that it's not going to be easy, but it is something that we intend to do and we want to get started. So if we just look at the, let me just stop for a moment. If anybody has a question or if anybody wants to step in and make a comment, just raise your hand. And if I don't see you raise your hand and somebody else sees a hand that's raised, please just let me know, because it's not meant to be, just me talking. Although I'm going to do a lot of talking. So if we look at the road improvement fee study, we see that obviously the priorities are vehicular. And we understand why that is. What we need to understand is how do we incorporate into the plan of capital improvement projects that include active transportation. Can we just start there?
Well, would you like the straightforward answer is you can't. The road, this is an AB 1600 study. It is a requirement for looking at development versus, growth and development versus future road needs to meet the county's level of service standards. So it's basically a congestion mitigation.
Okay.
And it
So
has,
this isn't the right document for addressing active transportation needs.
It is not.
Okay, and what would be the right document?
So you're again, a few opportunities to address active transportation. You could work to develop in concert with, as you noted before, with Public Works, Planning Department, and I would recommend also having LOCAC as a partner in that, a separate and standalone active transportation plan, so long as it's in concert with the community plan. You could work through the Planning Department to try to advance a update or amendment to the community plan. I don't want to speak for planning. I don't know the intricacies involved with that.
Mhm.
And or update of the county bikeways plan, which I think that if you talk, to the bikeways folks, I think that they have also a separate but related interest in transitioning the bikeways plan to an ATP. But again, it's more of a countywide item versus, local community wide.
Understood. So John, how do we get started in creating this new document that incorporates active transportation into an existing planning document that can be actually worked off of?
Well, honestly, we would want some planning folks on here. I'm not sure how it gets incorporated into this community plan. This plan has been many years in the making, and it was approved by the board, but is now with the Coastal Commission for review and approval.
Mhm.
So I think it would be any type of pedestrian plan or bikeways plan, and despite what it says in the kind of policy goals, I don't know how it would be actually incorporated into this community plan. But it's just because not that I don't know that it can. It's just I'm not we need some help from planning on that.
Right. So just so the community plan already has many, many references to active transportation throughout the document.
Mhm.
And I just read you one of them that comes directly out of the community plan. And I'll read you another one. The community envisioned Los Osos having complete and integrated circulation system. Planning for complete streets will be essential to this effort. While historically circulation system design was focused on inefficiencies for automobile travel, the complete streets movement instead promotes efficient design for all users, including bicyclists and pedestrians. To achieve this, the community supports reduced driving lane widths for new roads. Reducing widths help to calm and slow vehicular traffic, while allowing sufficient paved right-of-way to accommodate designated lanes for bicycles and pedestrians. So it's written into the document. We don't need to put it in there, but what we do need to do is create an active transportation circulation plan. And this is where, we want to get off on the right foot here. So,
and it's again, I'm speaking a little out of school, but these planning documents are the community plan. It's really governing new development and how the community grows.
Mhm.
So as new subdivisions are installed, there would be this overall active transportation plan that identifies the vision. And so then as new subdivisions are developed and the development goes in, they would be doing their pieces of it. And there could even be some offsite mitigations that could go onto existing roads. But then, the parts that are of the overall active transportation plan that applies to, wants and needs on existing roads, there's not a funding source for that. There's grants, there's competitive grants that can be pursued, but there's no, besides new development and they're going to have to make their own improvements within their projects. There's the road impact fees for vehicle level of service, and there can be some nexus there, but for the most part, it's looking at new development to install their pieces of the puzzle.
Yeah, Josh, and I appreciate you speaking, because that really is more of the planning side of it and not really your side of it. So I appreciate you bringing that up. So that does bring up a topic that I think is really important, and that is new development. And in the road improvement fee study, it does talk about growth and a 20-year plan of how the community would grow. And in the study, it says we can anticipate 1,844 additional residential units in Los Osos by 2040. I asked Corey to go back and do a little investigation for me. The past 10 years in Los Osos, we have had exactly 23.
Right.
So everybody knows that growth is not really going to happen in Los Osos for the obvious reason. So, however, even though we're not going to have this growth, and clearly we're not going to have the fees that come with new development, so we're not going to be able to get really good funding for any changes, transportation changes.
So, hey, Deborah, sorry, I need to pause right there because I can kind of see the tree that you're barking up. I think that you may if you would like to get into a larger discussion or maybe have a sideline discussion about theories, philosophies regarding how a road fee program is implemented and developed, we can do that. I'm not sure today is really the time or the place for that, specifically because I don't want any misinformation to be put out there or some misconceptions, primarily here that there's some expectation of growth, and that's not the issue. The issue boils down to, for the next person who pulls a permit within the community, what is their fair share contribution to the increased traffic load?
Mhm.
And universally speaking, and by California law, it's determined that it's based on this sunset growth horizon, and the community plan has established that, or at least the general plan has established that for the time being, that's approximately a 20-year forecast. And it's not, there's no implication that, okay, yes, the community is going to be 100% built out in 20 years. This has to do with the next permit holder. What is their fair share contribution?
Thank
And
you,
so
Josh.
whether
I
that
appreciate that.
Yeah, and so
I
whether
think
that
that's
takes
a really important distinction.
yes,
And you know, I was just making the point that we're not going to be accumulating a lot of fees because we're not going to be having a lot of development. But I want
and therefore all the improvements that are listed therein may not need to be implemented in any kind of hurried time frame. For instance, if you're right, if we only get 20 new houses constructed over the next 10 years in Los Osos, that's probably not substantive enough to justify the expense of putting in a dual left turn lane on South Bay Boulevard at LOVR, correct?
Mhm.
But we have satisfied our fiduciary responsibility in collecting those impact fees.
Mhm.
And you know, I mean, your committee probably already knows this, of course, but you know, there's really been no development in Los Osos in the last 35 years. You know, within the sewer zone, there's been a building moratorium. There's, you know, a few little things have somehow been worked in, and then there's been some development around the fringes that are not actually in the wastewater service area. And that's basically it for the last 35 years. And, you know, the water issues, the endangered species habitat issues have held it up. First, the waste, you know, in addition to wastewater, water and endangered species, this community plan is one of the key documents that needs to go to the Coastal Commission. You know, their conditions on the community are that, you know, no new development until this community plan is adopted.
Mhm.
The other is the habitat issues for endangered shoulder-band snail. That is, you know, requires federal approval with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. That's also in progress. You know, when either of those are approved, because those agencies both, you know, operate on their own timelines at their own pace. But I know even beyond that, because I know in the past there'd been a kind of an assumption or a fear that once, you know, these kind of moratoriums are lifted, there'll be this huge growth, huge building boom. But you know, what I've heard is that there's still a kind of a growth rate, a reasonable growth rate that it will also be imposed. So, you know, while there has not really been much development at all in 35 years, you know, it will happen sometime in the future. It will start to happen, but it's still going to happen at a measured pace. And I think that's a lot of the frustration the lack of new infrastructure in the community, right? There has not, I mean, you usually get new infrastructure from new development, new subdivisions, even new commercial properties. They do improvements in their area, and including making connections between roads that dead end, or pathways that don't connect, and they provide those. And that's really our mechanism for making improvements within our road network, but even then within an active transportation network. And so without that growth occurring, it really limits essentially the funding source, whether it's road fees or just as part of their development and their overall plan and their overall improvement project or development project. Those types of things are implemented. So that's a big, and that's always been for the last 30 years, that's been an issue as Los Osos has had to wait through this building moratorium.
Yeah, John, you're making my point for me, and you made it much better than I did. So I'm going to pause because we do have some hands up, and I'm going to start with Trish, and then Meg, and then Jim. So Trish, you want to unmute? Oh, no, you're still, let me see if I can help you. Where are you?
There. Okay, no, I think we're good. I think the question I have is due to the fact that we do have a very low growth rate. Is there any way that we can kind of change the paradigm of building left turn lanes, right turn lanes, and instead do more active transportation lanes for bikes, for walkers? I mean, that would give us enough room to get from school to school if we didn't do some of the left turn lanes. Is there any way to change the paradigm coming from the county on maybe everything that works in San Luis Obispo doesn't work here? Is there any flexibility on changing how we do things?
Again, I'll answer that question, John. It goes back to the community plan process. So again, the community plan sets the vision for your community, and the implementation most typically comes from growth and development, but it can also be kind of a guideline for other directions that you want to take it. If you guys are talking about creating new pathways, introducing elements that differ from the community plan, then you're looking at a community plan update, or some kind of a companion document, such as the bikeways plan, trails plan, or getting the board of supervisors to adopt an ETP plan.
Okay.
So the vehicle is there,
Okay.
but it's a tough hill to climb, and I might just kind of like try to short circuit the conversation. I feel like we're speaking at this like 100,000 foot level about, well, what's the way to go about this and create these plans and these documents. If you're dissatisfied with the community plan, the trails plan, or the bikeways plan, your choices are to, again, update those or pursue some kind of addendum documents. That is a very costly endeavor, both actual dollars and cents and in time. You might consider in this group, if there are a particular, let's say, handful of betterments that you're looking to make, simply just pursuing those, looking for some community support, maybe making it more ad hoc. Because all you're going to get is you're going to get a project list on a list. Let's say you come up with, you're going to get rid of Skyline Drive, and you're going to make the whole thing a class 1 path from point A to B, for instance, as a wholly new project. Getting that into sort of a planning document is one thing, but all it gets you is a planning document. Versus if you have this huge outpouring of community support, that was the one thing we cared about the most, you could pursue that completely separately. Obviously, you're tied to the HCP, but that could be a consideration for the group. So sorry for the long-winded answer there.
No, that's good.
I guess what Josh is saying, and kind of what we've been saying is there's really, I mean, the funding for these types of projects is very limited. And so, prioritizing and having, even a community-led, community-funded project, that is really has broad support, may be some of the best, options to get these done. But there's only so much funding out there, so it really needs to be prioritized. Of like, this is our number one priority, because all of those are, there's a lot of things in these different plans, but again, those are reliant on when something happens on that area, then these would go in. But if nothing's happening, if there's no development, they're not getting done.
Okay, so we're going to move to Meg, but before we do, I just want to make one comment, because Josh, I appreciate your common sense and getting down to brass tacks here, because obviously that's where we want to be. The multi-use trail on the north side of Los Osos is specifically spelled out in the Los Osos community plan. We don't have to create it. It's already there. And it is our number one priority. So, okay, Meg, I'm going to let you go ahead and unmute.
Thank you. Thanks. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. So as far as funding goes, this committee has discussed getting grants, and my understanding is that we cannot apply for a grant. And are either of the parts of the county, planning or some other entity in the county willing to help us with getting grants if we can get the funding, especially for projects just like Deborah was discussing that are already on the plan?
Well, I mean, just to talk specifically about that, that multi-use trail, because that's come up recently with the ATP grant cycle, and it just really, it doesn't meet the criteria. It's not, there's no path to construction in a reasonable time frame. There's the endangered snail issue that really prevents any development in that area. There's right of way where there's homes and front yards within the trail pathway. So it's just one of those it's a long-term plan that will probably be implemented in phases as development happens along that frontage. But to have a project that can meet grant criteria and be competitive statewide with the thousands of other projects that are submitted, it doesn't have, because of the constraints on development in Los Osos specifically, but also for one, and also right away, just to be specific there, that one just doesn't have it's not feasible to construct it in any type of foreseeable time frame.
So my understanding was that with the snail, they do a study, so it wouldn't necessarily be infringing upon the habitat. Is that true or not?
No, not entirely. There's, they're doing a community-wide habitat conservation plan, and so that's really it's been developed. It's with U.S. Fish and Wildlife for review. But there's really no, the county is, leading that, is pushing on that project or on that plan, but they're notorious for taking forever, literally forever.
Right.
We have others that we've worked on for 15 years.
Because this is a pathway, it's not a full development. I would think that
Right.
that would be in a different category than wanting to build a home or commercial property on that piece of land.
Yeah, any work that impacts or potentially impacts snails is subject to the restrictions.
Okay, and you mentioned also the houses. We actually have thrown around an idea for an alternate direction for that last bit where the houses are a problem. And if the houses were not a problem, we'd be left with, then you said two other things, the snail habitat, and what was the other one?
Well, it's right away. The house, yeah.
The right of way.
Yeah.
And what does that mean, the right of way?
Well, there's not a clear pathway to get there because there's private property in the way.
Right, and that's what I'm saying. If this, can I jump ahead or should I stop there, Deborah?
So, hey, this is Josh.
I mean-
If you don't mind if I just jump in, I think the conversation specific to the class 1 path, I would urge that this committee just defer that conversation till your next maybe a meeting or 2 or 3 away. The county does have a grant request application in with SLOCOG to fund the Los Osos Valley Road corridor plan, which would include implementation of these priority projects and prioritizing, looking at the shortfalls. If that grant's awarded, then we'll be back to this committee and inviting a part of your participation in that process. If the grant is declined from SLOCOG, then we'll be back at this committee and we can talk about what plan B would look like for working with you guys to advance looking at this. Because we're having a working meeting right now, and I don't think this is the time or place for that. We can't just put in a path. You've got to implement. Unfortunately, welcome to government. We have to implement. What does the build out look like? Los Osos Valley Road through that segment is envisioned to be wider. We would like to make it easier for folks to turn left into their driveway as they're heading westbound on Los Osos Valley Road. Many times right now they're blocking traffic westbound as they make that left turn movement. So a center turn lane. We still need to have curb, gutter, and sidewalk. Just being laser focused on the class 1 path is a non-starter, because none of us in this conversation or in this county could get funding to put in a project that maybe only has a 10-year horizon. We have to put in projects that are basically long-lived.
Yeah.
So that's I would, if I may, I would make a motion to shelve this conversation for maybe 60 to 90 days.
Okay.
Yeah. And what Josh is talking about is with this corridor plan, it would look at Los Osos Valley Road through the whole of Los Osos and a number of the priorities that are in the community plan, in the circulation element, and that I expect to probably LOCAC priorities too. And the path is in part of that, but I just wanted to make sure that there's the expectation there that this is not a straightforward project and can be done in a short time frame, unfortunately, just because of the realities of state and federal regulations.
I feel like Jim, if I could put you on pause for a minute, Jim Hale, and because this seems like a really good time to introduce John D'Annunzio and have him introduce himself, because we've already sort of introduced the SLOCOG factor, and then maybe you could speak a little bit to how you work with Public Works and moving these projects forward.
Yeah, sure. Good evening. Thank you, Deborah, and good evening, committee. My name is John D'Annunzio. I'm a regional transportation planner at the San Luis Obispo Council of Governments. I work in the division of programming and project delivery. So I'm essentially kind of a glorified or unglorified grant writer. So I help our public works department, county, and with the cities, the 7 cities in SLO, obtain state and federal funding for programs, and they can be small, medium, large size program. A big bulk of my time is helping Caltrans with the 46 East. So the segments that they're building out by the Shandon rest stop, a lot of my time goes into the funding and programming of that. But we also, as an agency, also work with the 11 communities, the same as County Public Works does. So, right, there's 11 advisory committees in the county, just like this one, just like LOCAC. This is a subcommittee of LOCAC. And so our interest there is helping to helping communities and helping the county to develop their community plans, to work through their capital improvement programs, be it highway, streets, roads, trails, bridges. And then a big part of our job is also with transit. I don't particularly work with transit, but keeping the RTA going is, and then the ride share program, which helps to mitigate trips. So if more people were not in their cars, we wouldn't need the big intersections. So that helps to, those programs kind of help reduce costs and reduce the need. So our board is different, right, than the county. So it includes the county. 5 county supervisors are on our board, but we also have the 7 cities on our board. So each of the communities are interested in obtaining state and federal programming, and then we work with technical advisory committee ourselves, consisting of our public works, directors, assistant directors, and planning departments of the cities. And we help to kind of, negotiate where and the balance of the state and federal funds will go to our region. So a metropolitan planning organization, an MPO, what SLOCOG is federally designated. So it's by federal law that we exist. We're unusual in that we are only one county. So most of the MPOs around the state, there's 18 of them, have numerous counties, and the idea is to work on cross-jurisdictional sort of issues. We also do not own right-of-way. So we are a joint powers authority, which means we can help to negotiate and sponsor projects or co-sponsor phases, but implementation is done by the owner. So if it's City of SLO, it's their land, they own it. If it's county land, they own it. So an important document for us is the regional transportation plan. And what we do with that, it's kind of the 30-year capital improvement program. We go through the community plans with staff, like the Los Osos community plan, and then we make sure that those projects are kind of on this list. And as long as they're on the list, should a project mature to a state or stage or phase where state and federal funding could come in for pre-construction or construction, then it's eligible if it's on the list. So there's, at the moment, I checked before the meeting, there's about 33 projects in Los Osos that are in the regional transportation plan. So should a project ever get to a stage where the county is comfortable and ready to implement it, their 5-year capital improvement program is pretty intense as it is, and they have limited resources, as you've heard. So really, our partnership with them is, I would say we defer to the judgment of the county into where the funding is best pointed to. So it's not to say that there aren't edges to that and there aren't rubs here and there, but that's generally speaking our practice, because we serve the county just like the other cities. They kind of belong, it's kind of like a transportation chamber of commerce. We all are supposed to be working together. So that's a bit about what SLOCOG does and what we do. We did do a regional active transportation plan recently, And I remember we worked with Meg Siphon on making sure that there was kind of a call out, a fact sheet on the Los Osos community, the trail from Palisades that you're interested in our plan. Should it ever mature to a state. I did talk to Deborah kind of back in January, and and at the time I had felt that the project just wasn't mature enough for state funding. Just knowing, I sit on one of the committees that helps to determine state funding for the active transportation plan, and it's very, very competitive. And just from a public outreach and public engagement perspective alone, I just didn't think that we were quite there yet. And for this cycle, not to mention that pre-construction has not been, acted upon. So we've kind of talked about that over this spring, and I'm really here tonight because it sounds like you're starting off on a new adventure as a committee. And I really wanted to be here tonight to show that SLOCAG is interested in that journey with this community, just as we are the other 11, board recognized community advisory councils or advisory committees, and also to learn too, the best way to partner with the community and with Public Works. I think it's a shame that planning isn't here tonight, as I understand. I'm sorry, I'm just total monologuing right now. That each community, according to the community advisory handbook that's on the page, each community is assigned a planning liaison, planning and building liaison. It's meant to attend monthly. Now, I'm not sure that counts for subcommittees. I think it might just be the LOCAC, but that nexus to the county is really where planning should be feeding, in my opinion. Planning should be feeding back to Public Works, and people like Josh Roberts and John Waddell should be hearing about project and planning through planning division. I believe that is how I think it should work. So
that's very helpful. Thank you. And yes, Corey has been attending our monthly meetings. And Joshua, I know you have to leave and your hand is up, and Jim, your hand is up. However, I know John has to leave too, and I want to make sure that we talk about the corridor study, because it specifically is a corridor study of Los Osos Valley Road. And what can we expect from that corridor study? What can we look to as far as what are you studying? What kind of improvements are you looking at on that study? And if that's appropriate, and then I apologize, I will let the people with their hands raised talk.
Hey, Deborah, Josh Roberts, County Public Works. First off, let me say that I would also echo John D'Annunzio's comments regarding his appreciation for this committee getting started. I think it's great, pun intended, that this active transportation committee is being active in their pursuit of these items. A lot of the subcommittees simply exist as passive groups. They're there to respond to specific requests, but aren't really trying to get out ahead of things. So I think this is wonderful. Specific to your question about the corridor plan, it's pretty simple. The corridor plan will answer the question of how. Right now, what the community plan, the circulation study identifies what improvements are envisioned, what improvements are needed, and the vision of the corridor plan was, well, how does that work? How do these get implemented? How do these look when they're done? There's a kind of a hint, I guess, towards what you would see. There are some kind of specific renderings of some portions of Los Osos Valley Road within the community plan that have a little more detail about streetscape And we would be looking to expand that to the whole of LOVR, but more importantly, project phasing, implementation, and ideally looking at implementation alternatives. Last little plug I wanted to put. I'm going to jump ahead on the agenda, Deborah, if you don't mind, to item E. How do folks submit requests to the county? And those come from, we get requests for service from all directions. Sometimes they come from LOCAC, they come through the supervisor's office, they can come through our front desk, they can come through the website. Easiest thing to do, if you take, again, I don't want to reiterate the whole entire website here, but if you go to the County Public Works website, you can submit a service request there. So that's anything from signs down, requests for looking at speed limits, questions about traffic operations, fill potholes, work on shoulders, trim trees, etc. Again, if you take a look at the web link that I emailed out previously, and Deborah, if you got folks who didn't see that email, if you don't mind forwarding that,
No problem.
onto them. The web is probably the best because it gives us the most complete information. Sometimes we'll get a voicemail from somebody that says, "Hey, I'm out here in Los Osos, and there's a lot of people speeding on Ravenna. You should do something about it." And then they hang up. So I don't have a name. I don't have a phone number. I have no idea on Ravenna where the problem is. And it's hard for me to address. Usually through the website, it requests some additional information. Contact information is most important. Our protocol is to call everyone back, find out what's the problem that they're seeing, and address it in compliance with the state law.
Okay, real quick before you guys hop off, I want to give Jim an opportunity to ask his question or make his comment. Jim Hale.
Thank you. So first, I wanted to thank John and John Waddell and John Denuzio and Josh Roberts for being here. It's very helpful to hear your side of things. To Josh's point, we want to be an active participant in getting some of these things done and funded. And so the fact that we're here and you're here is really encouraging. And I just want to understand more fully as we move forward, what do you need from us so that we can participate and be a catalyst to address some of these issues as a community for you? And then we in turn can work together with you to find some alternative sources of funding to get some of these things that we'd like to see get done. So that's all. I really am encouraged by this meeting, and I just want you to know that we want to be a resource, a cooperative resource for you. And we hope that in turn we can have the same down the road as well. So thank you.
Well, thanks, Jim, for that. That's a good wrap up, I think, because we're just getting started on this conversation, and we don't want to be, we don't want to sound like we don't support anything, we don't want to do anything, because that's not where we're coming from. And I really like Los Osos as a community. I'm a bike rider. It would be awesome if there were bike trails all over. It's just, the realities of funding, the available funding, the different sources, and the environmental and permitting conditions right now are really tough in Los Osos. So I think understanding and having, if your committee creates priorities, and you've said what your number one priority is, kind of creates priorities, and maybe not even so much down to the details of these individual trails, but bigger picture priorities. We want to get from point A from this part of town to that part of town. How can we make some improvements? Because then there may be some paths forward. Like Josh talking about, the contacting Public Works for issues and maintenance. that is really our state of good repair, right? Our first priority from our board is maintaining a state of good repair. That's not even fully funded, but the part that we have funded is our roads maintenance crews, and their mandate is state of good repair, corrective maintenance. So when it comes to safety, if there's a safety issue that is a maintenance issue, they are on it. They respond quickly, usually within a day or two, is most common. Very short. If it's a bigger issue, it might take a little longer. But when it comes to maintenance issues, and especially safety issues that are corrective maintenance, that's the major part of our role. And we also want to bring projects and improvements to community, but that's where we have a lot more constraints on those betterments, including safety betterments. But hearing from as a community, work through these different planning documents and just looking at individual projects and also the bigger picture of goals and setting those priorities. I think that's where we can work with you to try to identify ones that could work and how they could work, and where you could maybe find outside funding.
Yeah, this is great. Thank you, John. This sort of brings me around full circle back to where we started talking about growth, because the segue to growth and the thing that I want to bring to both of your attention is that while we're not growing as far as new residents and development, we are seeing increased traffic because Los Osos has been chosen. Just recently, USA put us as one of the top 10 beach communities in the United States. Number 8 in the United States. Montana de Oro was advertised in all the travel magazines, hidden gem. So we're getting a lot of traffic here that does not relate to growth. It does not relate to new development, but it does relate to tourists. And that's great. We want that. However, it has created an increase in traffic. And we want to know, are you able to capture that? I know you do traffic counts. Are you able to capture that increase in traffic that's coming in through on the weekends?
We do, semi-regular Josh just signed off. He knows.
I know, I'm sorry we missed him.
But no, it's every few years we do traffic counts on each road. So it's not a regular thing, but it's on a regular basis, but it's not annually. So, we do capture that. And then.
Yeah, we were told that they did the count from Tuesday to Thursday, which obviously would miss any of the weekend traffic. So, we just want to make sure that we're getting credit for the amount of traffic that's coming through here. And that leads me to the safety aspect, because it creates a very unsafe road on Los Osos Valley Road. The traffic limit, the speed limit is 40, and I can assure you people are going 50 on Los Osos Valley Road. And part of that is because of the turn lanes. It allows for the through traffic to go faster and travel in a smoother way. And it's an invitation for those people to drive faster. So again, going back to the Los Osos community plan, it specifically calls out for traffic calming elements to be added in. And I do have a concern about adding these turn lanes into Los Osos Valley Road, where, it's the first thing on the capital improvement project, that I fear that actually will do the opposite of traffic calming. It will actually encourage people to drive faster when they're already driving well over the speed limit. So, something that we want to sort of massage a little bit here with you guys and see what we can do to. Jim Hale was telling me that he saw 2 BMWs drag racing on Los Osos Valley Road going almost 80 miles an hour. So, that's the exception, but you can see that the point is that when you have that wide roadway, it encourages faster moving traffic and not slower moving traffic. And we don't feel like that's appropriate in our community.
Sure, I totally understand. If there are specific times of the day or week that, it seems like there's, obviously if there's more traffic, well, usually that slows people down, but if there's times where it seems that there's speeders and regular speeders and, kind of similar timeframes and maybe even similar cars, I mean, the CHP will, if you can, call those complaints in with those specifics, they do make those priority to patrol.
Mhm.
That's one way. The other thing is we do speed surveys, and so we also track, what is the prevailing speed, what's the 80th percentile. That's how we have to do that to set enforceable speed limits. So there's always going to be outliers and people that are speeding, but on the whole, because we do these speed surveys, we know and set the speed limits for those speeds. So if that's like on the Los Valley Road, those speed limits, that is really what the 80th percentile are at.
Right,
There are
but
definitely speeders out there.
John, you know this community well enough that whole section of Los Osos Valley Road where we want to put our class 1 bike path, those are school zones. Monarch Grove is there, the Methodist Church is there, they're all posted 25 miles an hour. And so, and then it jumps up to 40 and then, it's, they're just blasting through. So we're trying to find this way to, it's really about safety.
Yeah, understand.
So
Well, I need to sign off.
yes, I know you do. Thank you,
So
John.
I am going to go. Thank you for having us and for your time and for just your work on our roads and transportation network. So appreciate it.
Yeah, and we'll continue this conversation. We'll try to, communicate and get our priorities straight. So thank you.
Okay.
Thank you for your
Okay.
time. Okay, bye. John, yes.
Deborah, I'm really sorry. I have to go. It's our wedding anniversary
I know.
tonight.
I'm so happy that you came.
So I have to pop off. But I wanted to just respond to something that Jim Hale on the committee had said earlier, and just to kind of reiterate kind of the goal setting and the vision making maybe from this committee. I'm aware that over the winter and the spring, there were some community members who had done quite a lot of like letter writing and kind of visioning for various different circulation patterns, or kind of a loop, a circular through Los Osos. And I suppose I just wanted to say that those ideas are really valuable to have captured, either working with planning or working with a Cal Poly intern, or working with somebody who's really proficient in like graphic design, fact sheets, or even turning that into just a 3-page sort of prospectus. Like if you're going to buy a home at Avila Ranch or San Luis Ranch, they do a glossy sort of thing. It's kind of like a marketing piece. And part of the reason, like with Meg and putting that into our active transportation plan, is just so we can rip that out and sell it to the state, sell it to the feds. And I think the same might be helpful. And again, this is just a style, right? Not everybody has that style, but if we could really see kind of what was in that vision, and if it was just in a document that was light touch, but then the supervisors would have it, the planning, public would have it, and public works would have it, and it just would be around. That might act as like an addendum to the bikeway advice, that 2016 bicycle master plan. It could be brought into that, or it might help to influence the capital improvement program, right? That's what Josh and John just left, but that's, I think, the goal, right, is to just get the projects onto the hit list that Public Works can trigger its budget and spend down and install. And that's really what they want to do. They just want to build. So something tangible would help us sell it to the state and the feds. So
Yep.
throw that out there. And okay.
Thank you, John. Happy anniversary.
Okay, thank you.
for showing
Thank
up
you so
tonight.
much. All right, bye.
Thanks, John.
Yep, bye.
Okay, committee. So, we didn't get to some of the agenda items, but I think we have a lot to talk about. So why don't I just open the floor up to discussion? John's point that he just made is directly related to Jeff's grid, his transportation grid. Everybody loves that concept. And this is not the first time he's told me this. He said, if you really put together a marketing piece for that, we can sell it. So, and it's not unlike what Jim Quisenberry is talking about doing with his little video project, Where the Streets End. So marketing and selling it is going to be a big part of what we need to do in order to get these things on the list. And if they get on the list, then there is an opportunity for them to get built. This is my understanding. Okay, I just want to open it up for conversation here. Impressions, thoughts? Go ahead, Jim.
So I've learned a lot, and Josh told me what he said in his emails. Basically, they're vehicle oriented. That's where the money is, and it's also guided by some kind of new or future development.
Mm-hmm.
I think John D'Annunzio gave us some of the best information in terms of how do we go about this. I'm still a little bit confused about the role of our CSD and the county planning department. Do we present just a slow cog to county planning, or do we try to get some of our local CSD members to come on board to support even the smallest parts of that project? I've lived here 34 years. I've always been a little amazed that there's really no way one can walk around this community. I mean, I know how to get to the store, but I'm in the street, for a good half mile, walking in the street. And up where I live, it's not a problem. There's not a lot of traffic. Other people who live like along Los Osos Valley Road, or for whatever reason they have to get from Pine to do a little shopping, where do they walk? And so I am going to talk to planning to tell them they need to cut at least cut down some of the foliage along LOVR. I mean, traditionally that's a path. It's there. It's sandy. People walk on it. But I'm still a little frustrated with the complete bureaucracy it takes to get what I think in some ways is a pretty simple solution. I agree there's some problems with the class 1, as I like to call it, corridor, down Los Osos Valley Road, biking and walking path from the park to the school, that is Monarch Grove. But this is just kind of general griping and comments, but I would be happy to sit down with folks and see if we can't draw up something. It exists already, but I guess we need to package it better. Mm-hmm. And I do want to commend you, Deborah, for getting those the 2 county employees and the slow cog John D'Annunzio on the Zoom meeting. So thanks to you.
Oh, thanks, Jim. Okay, Jeff, you have your hand up?
There, I'm unmuted here. Yeah, I have to also commend you. You've done really well with this meeting. I know John Denuzio has been really favoring this core loop concept because it's a community-wide type basis. When I put that thing out, if you recall, I think it was in January, and actually I was really doing it on the fly, but it started to work really well for me as to something we could do. But it really was a pilot, idea, and it's subject to change. Though I think the community, this group, needs to really figure out, is that the right basis core loop, if that's what we want to do, to then go forward with this brochure or marketing thing. Sorry. But it does have some issues with Ravenna or going down through Palisade, but at least it gets that concept out there. I guess I'd ask the question, has everybody walked it? Has anybody walked it? And because, you almost have to look and feel, do you think this is going to work? You can't just say, we like this core loop, unless you really try it and say, okay, to the best of our ability, this probably would serve the wider community. So I think if we're going to go that route, to get more people, I guess, endorsing it from the heart, rather than it's just, well, that looks like what maybe Denuzio likes, or, that might sell. Is this what you want? And to do it, you got to walk it. And then kind of think, okay, now how can we build off of that? Okay, if we got those pieces and we all like those are ones you want. And now the county has something to work with. So that was the one part on that particular aspect. I really invite people just to walk. I mean, it's not going to be that difficult. You do have to come around through the church and Palisades or something, because one piece isn't there, but you get a sense of it. But the other thing I have a little bit of a problem with, and I've run through this because I did a lot of the stuff in the community plan. So planning is the owner of this community planning document, and they're responsible for land use growth. But they look to their experts for the various components, whether it's environmental, it's transportation. So the circulation element, when you go to planning, they say, well, what do you think of the circulation element? And we need to modify this. Well, that's a public works element. So we're in a little bit of a conundrum here. And the problem with public works I've said this before. All right, well, they say, well, here's the bikeways plan. Well, the bikeways plan is a public works plan. And here's the trails plan, and it's parks and rec plan. Oh, by the way, they aren't responsible to look at the community plan and the impact for growth, or what's happening here with new tourists coming in. So there's a big miss, and that may be the message to go back to planning with, is in this one element. Yes, they have all the three components, but there was no responsibility for anybody to measure AT components, especially where we have multi-use, asphalt that has to be used for a variety of that. That would be, I guess, where I would head with it with planning, is if we're looking for an addendum of some sort to try to take that aspect. But those are kind of my two comments. One, walk it and see if this is really what you want, because you really got to want it, or we're just kind of going around, going in circles a little bit. And maybe there's a better solution. Maybe there's a better core loop, and we got to anchor on something and go for it. That's my thoughts.
Yeah, we have some work to do, no doubt about it. And Jeff, you're right. Let's make sure we really want what we're asking for. We prioritize Los Osos Valley Road because that seemed so obvious that was needed. And I know they keep telling us there's insufficient right-of-way there as you get close to Doris, and trying to come up with a workaround for that. they didn't seem too interested to even know what that was about. So, you know, we still have work to do there, but even if they did part of it, because even John said, oh, it has to be phased in, we wouldn't do the whole thing. Well, okay, so do from Palisades to Pine. Okay,
I agree.
already that's a huge improvement, right?
That's
And
what
the
I
only
was thinking.
and the only thing we have to worry about is the snail. Well, by the time they get the planning and design done, we should have a way to deal with the snail. So, I mean, by then the habitat conservation plan should be approved. And so, you know, there's no reason to really like go on ice here. And I feel like sometimes they just want to put us a little bit on ice, but that's not going to happen. The grid, yeah, we want the grid. We just want to make sure we know where we want it and how we want it. And yeah, we should walk it. I just want to remind everybody, and Andrea, I think you don't know what the grid is, but I'll share that with you. The new part that goes through the open space there, the Tri-W space, actually exists as a trail on the Parks and Rec plan. We don't have to create it. It's already there. Now, the one thing I would say, because it occurs to me the way that land is, it goes down and up and all kinds of, you know, it doesn't have to be a straight trail. It can be a trail that bends and weaves around whatever obstacles might be there. And that just makes it a little more interesting. The biggest thing we need to find out is who are the private property owners there? And I think Carrie Brown, who did the Los Osos community plan, she's very involved with that. And she might be the best person for us to go to find out who are the private property owners in that space, because obviously we would have to weave around those people if we were to do a Parks and Rec trail. So, you know, we have some work to do on that project. And then John didn't say it, but he told me that SLOCOG is going to fund the Los Osos Valley Corridor Study. They're giving Public Works the money so they can move forward on that study. So we're just going to make sure that we're really, really clear about what we need to be a part of that study, and however we need to, you know, if we need to put it in as a safety issue, which I think is the one that makes the most sense, a safe routes to school issue, which obviously makes tremendous sense, then that's how we need to put it in there. So the one piece that's been missing here is the planning piece, you know, working with the county planning department. And so that'll be our next step, is getting them involved and getting them incorporated into this conversation. Anybody else? Any other comments they want to, you want? We did have funding resources listed on the agenda. It kind of speaks for themselves, really. These are possibilities for, you know, where we can get money for funding projects. And if we get our project really nailed down, then we can go and get that funding. And then we don't have to worry about the fact that Public Works doesn't have the money. I made a note to myself, if I can find it somewhere. Hold on, in all my little notes. So when they built the El Moro path, and I think everybody knows where that Class 1 bike path is from the middle school on El Moro, and it ends at the Baywood Elementary School. The funds for that came from Public Works, General Fund, Caltrans, and a federal highway grant. That's where the money came from for that. So there's no reason why we can't do that again. Meg?
Yeah, so it begs the question, though, we can't apply for that funding. They would have to, or somebody would have to sign off on the application.
Yeah.
So
Well, we may have to go to the school like we talked about before.
Mhm.
But what John Waddell is saying and what Josh has already told me is that those homes on the corner of Doris and Los Osos Valley Road, they're the joy kill here. They're not going to
Right.
do a project because
Right.
the homes
But
don't allow them.
I don't know if you remember last month, I proposed that there be a safe crosswalk at Pine,
Yeah.
Alexander, and then I thought about it further, and instead of going all the way around the block to get to Doris, because the class 1 bike path could just merge into the existing bike path to get to Doris on the north side. And then on the south side, just go across Doris and head up to Alexander and then cross the street. So it wouldn't be that loop around. Do you know what I'm referring to?
Yeah, you wouldn't have to go the extra blocks.
Exactly. And it, I mean, you could easily just go from the class 1 to the class 2 that's existing currently to get to Doris, and still it would be, pretty safe.
Well, they could also put some sort of barrier, small barrier like you see.
Right. Yeah, those pillars or
Yep.
something. Yeah,
Yep.
exactly.
So it doesn't prevent a car from going across into the class 2 path, but at least visually it defines that break much more significantly.
Yeah, actually, I'm thinking of the trash pickup and the mail service.
The homes there. My concern is that I'm afraid that kids won't cross the street. They're just going to keep going on the narrow path. They'll be, it's just like.
No, that's what I'm saying. If they're on the north side, they would just continue all the way to Doris. But if they're on the south side, they'd cross at Doris and then, they'd have to go on Los Osos Valley Road for a block and then cross again and then get on the north side. Does that make sense?
Crossing at the signal is fine, but crossing at the other crosswalk, I think is going to be hard to convince them to put up
a light.
Well, you'd have to have a safe crosswalk there.
Yeah.
So
that's why I was thinking the blinking light, but
the flashing lights like we have in the other part. So, so any other comments? Anybody else? We obviously need to refine our approach on the Los Osos Valley Road part. When Josh said that the Los Osos community plan has the build out, it calls out, let me just find that page, for what Los Osos Valley Road would look like. Here we go. You're not going to be able to see it, but I'm going to show you anyway. So it calls out for 76 feet, which would include a sidewalk, a bike path, 2 lanes of traffic, a median, 2 lanes of traffic, a bike path, and a sidewalk, for a total of 76 feet across. That's their vision for Los Osos Valley Road. Now, how do they think they're going to accomplish that? I don't understand. They're telling us we don't have room to put in just a little walking path on one side because there's no right-of-way easement, but yet they're somehow magically going to come up with 76 feet. I don't know.
Yeah, that doesn't make any sense to me at all.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't make sense. So, as Josh told me at the bikeways committee, he said, well, Deborah, if you want this bike path, you have to buy those 5 homes, tear them down, and then I can build your bike path. I was like, okay, I'll get back to you on that. Lindy.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear
Okay.
you.
I just had a curiosity, that section of LOVR on the north side where the houses
Mhm.
seem to come out much further. Has anybody checked to see if they're actually built into the existing right of way? It's not uncommon in Los Osos for those things to have happened and then nobody questions. So
Right.
if they were, then they would have to move their fences back.
Yeah, I did check. I did check because I actually checked to see if there was any easement there that we could right of way easement. And there is none. And I think, and I confirm this with, I will confirm this with planning. There is a turn lane there, a center turn lane at Doris. And I think they took the easement on that side of Los Osos Valley Road to create the turn lane.
Okay, gotcha.
So there is a little bit of easement on the south side. It's not a lot, but you kind of have the same issue over there where you have people's driveways. It's really unfortunate there that there's a bike lane, a very nice bike lane that is full of parked cars. So no bike could ever travel on the bike lane.
Well, on the El Morro pathway, they had a lot of pre-existing issues of people that had driveways through there. They came down the El Morro and parked. And so they had a lot of reorganizing to make that work. So it might be worth looking again at that whole stretch and seeing what they did with some of those ingress, outgress, and how they made that work. Because they kind of wiggled it a little bit here and there, but just a thought. So thank you. I appreciate all that you've brought up. It's really, it's good stuff.
Oh, thanks. Thank you, Lindy. Trish?
This is Jeff.
Okay, Jeff.
Just wanted to state that I think the most encouraging thing that I heard tonight was the fact that that study of Los Osos Valley Road is going to get funded. To me, that's a critical step here. And the conversations that we're having about that segment of Los Osos Valley Road, that's going to get addressed in this overall study. And it's really incumbent, I think, upon all of us and the community at large to make sure that when we have that community input piece, which I'm assuming we will as part of the study, that we really get our voices heard and that we have a clear, concise voice of what we want there. And the other point I wanted to make, and Deborah, I think you'll remember this, but towards the end of the last AT meeting that we attended when you made your great presentation, we cornered, was it John that we cornered?
Josh.
Josh, thank you, Josh. And we talked to him about extending that study to also include Pacho. And he agreed. Now, I don't know how much, he's going to remember that, but if there's any way we can encourage that study, at least in my mind, also include Pacho to the state park, I think that would be fantastic.
You know what? Thanks for reminding me of that. Yeah, I had forgotten about that. And of course, it is almost like just an extension of Los Osos Valley Road.
All it is a name change in my mind. It's just confusing.
Yeah. Okay. Anybody else? All right. Well, we're at 7:35. I think we've had a pretty good meeting. We'll keep the conversation rolling. We have our next meeting is what's today? Today's Tuesday. It's the third Tuesday of every month, 6 o'clock on Zoom. Thanks everybody for coming. Yep.
Could I add one more thing? I think Trish had something too, but I think the idea of getting Cal Poly a class to maybe take on helping us look at how to design and brochure something would be a great idea. They've done it before. They did that whole middle section past the Tri-W Midtown site, and a student project came forward with a beautiful park plan that never really got much, never got looked at much. But if anybody has a connection with Cal Poly engineering or road engineering student, architecture, whatever, they might be a really good resource to give to one of the classes this fall. So that's all. Thanks.
Okay, yeah, cool. Thank you. Good idea. All right. Anybody else before we sign off?
Great
Thanks,
meeting.
Thank you all so much for attending, and I'll see you next month, if not sooner.
Take care.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.